So the technology we have in these things is quite amazing. These are actually the ones you buy, well, I bought these ones at Costco, so you know what they're like. They're the magnifiers, right? 2.0. So I don't use these normally because otherwise you're just like you're a fog. But I can't read small print anymore unless I have these on, right? It's clear as day right now. Now it's like, well, it's not totally gobbledygook, but you know, it's very blurry. And some people's vision is such that actually it would be just a blur. They couldn't even make sense of what was on the page. Put your glasses on and all of a sudden you see. So it's an image for today's, sort of to invite us into today's reading, because we know that with certain technology, or technology we have today, we are able to cure, we can make better, we can rectify our visual problems. But there's another kind of visual problem that cannot be resolved or solved or healed by technology, and that's what we're dealing with today. It can be, you know, eventually we may even be able to heal those who are truly blind by getting deeper into, you know, the eye, as it were, the brain. But there's only, and that is possible for us to do. It's very difficult to actually heal another kind of sight, and that's the sight that we attain through intellectual, through the eye of our mind, which is a true eye, because it's not the eye like the eye of the body, but it's the eye of the mind which allows us to see the truth. We can very easily correct this kind of impairment with this. But the eye of the mind is affected by other things that are all very difficult, and only one can truly, he still requires our cooperation, but still only one truly can heal that blindness. And that's the one we encounter today. Bartimaeus is blind. We don't really know if it's from birth, but we can easily suppose it was. But the way, and St. Mark captures this in such a way that it seems like the Holy Spirit wants us to understand that this is more than simply an encounter with a blind man. Jesus cures him, and each goes his way. There's something more going on here that we're being invited into. Bartimaeus is sitting by the roadside, the city of Jericho. St. Mark points this out, because Peter obviously conveyed it to him. Now, why? Well, maybe just it was Jericho, or there may be more to it. You know, it takes on a sort of symbolic meaning that I think all of us are aware of, in that if you're living out in the country, like way out, what we call in the rural area, or even in the farm territories, now today is a little more difficult, but if you're in the time of Jesus, very difficult to access things that could easily lead you down the wrong path. If you're in the city, it seems to all be there. Like you have access to things that you can satisfy your sensual pleasures, your disordered passions, and so on. You have prostitution and things like this. These prostitutes tend not to be in the farming districts, at least in the time of Jesus. I don't know about today. So the city kind of represents, you can have great things in the city, but you can also have access to a lot of sin, a lot of bad things. And so you have this man sitting by the city with access to all these things, and yet there's all this injustice going on, because Jericho was also known as a place filled with beggars and blind beggars. So he's sitting by the wayside, and he hears Jesus, this Jesus of Nazareth, is passing by. Now, he's probably heard about Jesus already. He can't see anything, but he's listening to a lot of stories from passersby about Jesus, and he's eventually, or somewhere along the line, he's heard about Jesus of Nazareth, the miracle worker. He knows that this is probably his one opportunity to have healing in his life, and he's not going to waste it. We see that there are 4 things occurring that not only leads to his blindness being cured, but the Holy Spirit is instructing us to have our own blindness cured. And each of us in some way, because of original sin, which is kind of exacerbated or made worse, or the effects of it are sort of inflamed in our life by our own defects, the decisions we make or the decisions we refuse to make, are what we venial sin. the minor transgressions that lead to greater, sort of pave a pathway or establish a pathway to greater transgressions. So all of us have blindness to one extent or another. We tend to be blind to our own faults. Now, you may know this right away, but I think I would be pretty safe in betting that if I asked you, I'm still working on this, so it's not like I'm way above everybody else. What is your major defect? I don't want any show of hands. But if you don't know your major defect, consider that the devil knows it, and he manipulates you all the time through it. In fact, probably other people know it as well. And that's how we can be manipulated by others. They know our major, you call it your buttons, but it's our major defect. It's the one that stands out amongst the others. And so we all have blindness to one extent or another. So the first thing that occurs in this encounter between Bartimaeus and Jesus is that, first of all, he calls out to the Lord. Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. He can't but not be aware of the fact that he's physically blind. It's more difficult for you and me who can see and yet have to acknowledge that I'm blind and I need to be cured. So we need to acknowledge actually that I need the physician. I need Jesus to help me resolve this issue in my life. And there's a string of them that very easily to lay out each of us struggles with in different ways. So what happens is really important for us to understand, and that is the crowds try to shut this man up. And the world will do this when you seek to be healed of what makes you blind. You know, in many cities throughout North America, for example, and even in Europe, actually it's throughout the world, we make pornography, drug possession, alcohol addiction all too easy to succumb to. And although there are tremendous studies written on it, how damaging pornography is, it's a real cancer in society. I don't know that we do half of the work we could do to eliminate this wretched, horrible, demonic thing. It is demonic. Call it what it is. It's demonic. It's Satan twisting and perverting the goodness of the human person, objectivizing people for one another so that we just see people as objects. And you wonder why there's problems in society. We dehumanize individuals. So there's all these things that we're dealing with now. And now, depending on when young people have access to these kind of things, you can have all of this stuff accessible, not drugs, but certainly you can possess them or purchase them on the internet. You have it in your pocket with a mobile device. So this man's response is not to back down, but to shout louder, because he knows that he can live a better life. In his case, he wants to be healed. But you and I need to pay attention to that cry within our own heart. This is not the way it should be or could be, that I can have peace and happiness in my life. But it is not without a cost, and that comes as we go through this encounter. If we think we can have this in a trouble-free kind of way, get your head out of the sand. It's not possible. And if you know of a way, please let me know. I'll write a book, make millions of dollars, and give it all to the Pear Center. Because we all want a pain-free existence. And in this life, it doesn't happen. If we want healing, there's going to be some pain involved. But it's a pain that's worth it. We have to kind of reflect on these things. Now, Jesus hears him the first time. There's no question Jesus' hearing is perfect. So why is Jesus letting this guy shout and shout? And eventually he stops and he says, call him. Okay, have him come here. But Jesus is not deaf. Jesus is actually holding this man out to us as a model of prayer. Now, it happens in a short period of time, but the Lord is saying, look, we got to do this over a long period of time, no matter how long it takes. Because in the very act of praying, we are actually undergoing, if we are sincere about what we're asking for, what we truly need, we are actually undergoing healing, aside from what we actually get when we're in the healing process. Prayer itself, even though we think we're not getting answers, is a process of healing. So, for example, St. Monica, when she prayed for over 15, 20 years for the conversion of her son, she got no answer to her prayer. Monica herself, by persisting and persevering in her prayer, was actually undergoing sanctification in her own life. She was learning to have to trust God. Eventually, St. Ambrose told her that the son of so many tears will never be lost. But in the process, God was teaching her that sometimes we can't have what we, even is a good thing, the conversion of my child. You can't have that right away because God has his own timeline for Augustine. In the meantime, if you stop praying, maybe you won't become a saint. Maybe you'll lose out on sanctification, and maybe the timeline involved in this mysterious reality of prayer and the conversion of somebody will be disrupted. So Monica would learn this over a long period of time about the importance of persevering prayer. So yeah, it's only a short period of time here, but we learn how important it is to stretch this out if that's what the Lord calls us to do. The second step is when Jesus actually calls him, it's kind of strange that he gets up and he throws off his cloak. Why? He didn't have to. He could have actually got up and ran to Jesus with his cloak. Well, ultimately, we don't know the answer, but we can extrapolate and say, well, this is the most precious item this man has. Clearly, that is true. In the time of Jesus, the cloak was something you wore during the day for basic body warmth. At night, it was your blanket, because a lot of these people slept out in the street. And you could even lay down on it in the hot days of the summer. So it was like a really precious thing, maybe the only thing he truly owned. So it's really important. Why did he just cast it off? We don't know if he got it back. So it almost becomes a symbol for us of something we're all aware of. That if we want to run to Christ, if we truly want what we say we want, we must be willing to detach ourselves from what's holding us back. What we consider to be almost that without which I cannot live, or I think I can't live without it. This intense physical, sensual pleasure. I don't know if I can live without it. It's like an albatross around people's neck. It's like poison sugar. Like it's the sweetness that we can't live without, but it's killing us. It's making us unhappy. I can't live without it. You can. It's a self-induced lie. Or we've been weakened to the point where we need somebody saying to us, you can do it. If you can't believe in yourself right now, believe in me, Jesus says, and I'll help you then to believe in yourself as long as you are in relationship with me. Then you will gain a confidence that the world can never give you and it can't take away because it's not of the world. It's of me. This is like super important because it holds so many people back from even trying because they're frightened of what's on the other side of actually giving up that which they think they can't live without. That pleasure, or keeping their mouth shut because they always have to get in the last word, or all sorts of other things that we are kind of addicted to or are really bad habits that are doing us a lot of damage, our relationship with God and each other. Jesus requires him, again, something strange, like, okay, the next third step is, what do you want me to do for you? This is one of the few times, and I'm going to be a little dramatic here, all right? So I'm not trying to be disrespectful to our Lord. This is the one time that you would think the answer would be, duh, I'm blind. Why do I have to answer that stupid question? Now, of course, that's not what happens. That's just to be dramatic about it. But Jesus asks him the question, why? Jesus knows what he needs. Everybody knows the guy's blind. Why does he ask him the question? Because you and I need to actually articulate what we really want. In this case, it's easy. In our case, where the blindness is immaterial, our attachment to something that can't be seen, maybe it's the pornography, maybe it's all sorts of other things I'll mention in a moment, we need to articulate what we really want. And as one saint teaches us, like Josemaria Escriva, he said, do you really want, and I'm kind of massaging his words a bit, do you really want to be cured? Do you really want to be healed? How much? How much? How much? Just like a sensualist wants his pleasure, is that how much you want to be healed? How much? Like a miser wants his money? How much do you want to be healed? Like somebody who's drowning wants air? How much do you want to be healed? That's a really important question. And if we don't ask it and answer it, chances are we'll never be healed. because that voice will say, no, I want my satisfaction. We need to be willing to want it so bad that we'll do anything to get air again. We'll do anything to get Christ in our life. It's not doing something improper, it's doing everything that is proper, but it's going to cost us. And there's going to be, which is my voicing out, meaning there's going to be pain. There's always pain. If we think it's going to happen without pain, this is extremely rare. And even then, St. Paul had one of the rare instantaneous conversions, but St. Paul says, God gave me an angel of Satan to beat me. Why? Because he was so freaking talented, so full of gifts, that if he didn't have something, it was like a check to keep him humble. He could become proud and a man filled with sin. He said to the Galatians, you tear your eyes out for me. You know what kind of, what kind of power that is? That's like a drug. When I have power over people, if you're not stabilized, if you're not humble, you don't have people saying, that's wrong, and you believe them, you could so easily go off the rails. So this is super important. Jesus requires him to actually state what he needs, and what he says to Jesus in answer is leading to the next step. He doesn't say master in this case. He says, my teacher, I want to see again. And this is significant because what he's saying is, I want to be your disciple. I want to be your teacher. I want you to be my teacher. I want to learn from you. I want to hear everything you have to say. I want to follow you. I don't want this to be a one-time thing. It's because if we're freed of some problem in our life, we can't just walk away from Christ. We need a plan in place because nature abhors a vacuum. And it will come back. Remember the parable about Jesus, when Jesus taught about the guy who's freed of possession of a demon. Demon goes off, comes back. The house is swept. The soul is empty. Goes off and gets other demons. Comes back and inhabits the guy, and he's worse off than he was at first. Nature abhors a vacuum. Jesus needs to be occupying the house of our soul. So when the uninvited guests come, get out. Get out. I don't want you. Very important in our practical everyday decisions. Jesus cures him and then tells him, go, your faith has made you well. What does Bartimaeus do? Again, he can go back to Jericho. He can go back to wherever he was living or born. Doesn't do that. He follows Jesus along the way. And this is what is key. He becomes his disciple and he follows the master, presumably to the day he died. Bartimaeus is more than a blind beggar who is physically healed by the Lord. This man is you and me. And we really need to see that, interiorize this encounter between Bartimaeus and Jesus. This man is every person who has been blinded by the world in big or small ways, who detects a better way of life with Jesus Christ. Yeah, at first we're scared. We think, what is beyond the addiction or the problem or the obstacle I think I can't live without? Because once it's gone, like even if once I stop gossiping, what do I do with my speech? What do I do? What do I talk about? It sounds like a silly question, but I know people ask or they think this because I've been in confession for 34 years. Each of us needs to hear Jesus passing by and begin our own prayer. Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. Should be one of our kind of our aspirations, our prayers that we say on a regular basis. You know, when we encounter a difficulty, an obstacle in our life that just won't seem to go away. Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. It might be because of some addiction or a broken relationship in a family, a deep disappointment in life, bitterness or anger that won't go away. Some people hold on to anger for decades. People won't talk to each other. And you know, they're actually almost seemingly terrified to talk to, it could be even your own siblings. Because once you talk to somebody, you have to try and humanize them. What happens the further away we are from talking to somebody, the easier it is to dehumanize them. He or she is just a jerk. They're a creep. They did this, and it becomes like this huge, massive things that not even God himself seems to be able to resolve, which is a lie. Which is a lie. But the more, when we talk and there's a willingness to actually engage in somebody, there's a risk, always a risk, but we begin to humanize the person. And so, Jesus, Son of David, have pity on me. This anger that perhaps won't go away, or perhaps I think my life is dull and it's not going anywhere. Could be that you cannot see your vocation, your calling in life, or you are doubting the vocation that you are in. Whatever it is, Jesus passes by our way every single day. We need to, like Bartimaeus, cry out and not let the world, the devil, or our fallen nature, our flesh, our own attachments or insecurities keep us from crying out, Jesus, Son of David, Lord, Son of David, have pity on me, have mercy on me, that I may see when Jesus asks us. If we cry out and are willing to do our part, when Jesus calls us, we need to get up, throw off our cloak, run to him in prayer, the sacrament of penance for us Catholics, and then receive him in the Holy Eucharist. Then we will be healed, even if it takes a while. And there is a process with most of this stuff. When Jesus heals us, and it's not just a one-time thing, we need to do what Bartimaeus did, follow Jesus along the way. Become his disciple and follow him for the rest of our life. And we need to have some sort of program. It's the only way this stuff works. It's like if you want to learn, you have to subject yourself to school or get into a course. With Jesus, it's the same thing. There needs to be some program in order to keep us close to Christ. Become his disciple and follow him. You will see with new eyes and a new heart, with a new mind and a way of living. So I encourage you this week, pray these prayers often. Make them your own. Have them in your prayer arsenal. Jesus, Son of David, have pity on me. When you feel the urgings of anger or the passions of lust and so on, Jesus, Son of David, have pity on me. Have mercy on me. And mean it from the heart. Lord, when he asks you, what do you want me to do for you? Lord, that I may see. Help me to really see what is necessary in order to overcome this, to be close to you, that you be my teacher, not the world anymore. You free me from this. I know you have the power to do this, and give me the confidence I need, not so much in myself right now, but in you, who can do all things. And then I will learn that I can do all things in him and you who strengthens me.